narcissist.
All right.
Good afternoon and welcome. We are unnamed. We're going to come up with a name. I have Dana Diaz with me. I'm so excited. She's not really with me. She's co-hosting. So I'm so excited about this. We are doing a new series on narcissism, awareness, what you can do, how you can help yourself, how you can help others. And I'm so excited because this is so desperately needed and it's not out there. So I couldn't think of a better person to do this with. I have to tell you, I finished her book, Asping for Air. Oh my God. This book is so good that it is a must read. I'm serious. If anyone's ever been in a narcissistic situation, because I don't want to call it a relationship, because a relationship is two people together. If you've ever been in a situation of narcissism, you have to read this book. Like, I work 20 hours a day and I'm like literally doing pages while I'm trying to like prep for shows and stuff. It is so good. You can't put it down. And of course she wrote it. She's going to do another one here soon. So I can't thank you enough for co-hosting with me.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me to. I agree with you that we need to talk about this more because, as in any abusive situation, victims are hushed. We are silenced. We are afraid to speak up because God forbid you expose the abuser. There's consequences. You never know. And, people don't realize that narcissistic abuse, it's not necessarily its own type of abuse. It's just when a narcissist is abusing you. But the problem with narcissists are that they are all powerful, at least they think. Rules don't apply to them. They have no remorse and they're so unpredictable. So you have no idea. They could do something as little as what you can call bullying with the verbal abuse, but it can go all the way from, to the furthest extent of physical abuse to where it's straight up domestic violence. And, even a lot of these true crime shows, my husband and I watch them at night, like 48 hours or whatever. And, a lot of times he'll look at me and say, it sounds like your ex, or that's a narcissist. And I'm like, exactly. They go to the extent to that they will kill you to fulfill whatever it is that they're trying to fulfill. Or usually if it's a situation like that, it's because they're offended that you have called them out or expose them for who they are, because they can't risk that mask coming off, because in public, these are people going to church, they're school teachers, they're, volunteering, they're charitable, they're wonderful, but they're not
It's a
at all.
big facade. Absolutely. It's a huge facade. And these, people start, especially if it's not just in a relationship, but back at childhood, which I've noticed that there's not really a lot of talk about, which I would love to start talking about for both of us in that realm where childhood started, because it took me forever to realize that it was my childhood that put me to the line of my relationships that put me in with my abuser. And that took me so long to learn. And what just fascinates me, and not in the fascinating way people will take it, is that those who need to go on the couch for therapy, they don't think there's anything wrong with them. Those of us who have been at the end of the abuse, we're the ones who live on that couch. Like, we have a permanent seat with our name on it. But
Yes.
the abusers don't think they have a reason to go to therapy. And it's insulting to them if you even suggest such.
Well, it's insulting even to me. I can't tell you how many times in my life, whether I've broken down or had some, depression about something that, and people say, oh, you need help. You need to get help. And I'm like, no, you know what? I've got my issues. I have, I have to deal with the consequences of what people did to me, but they're the ones that need help.
Absolutely.
But like you said, that's why when people talk about narcissistic personality disorder, I mean, I if you want to slap a label on it, fine, but tell me any human being that's a true narcissist that's going to go to the doctor and say, I think I have narcissistic personality disorder. They're not going to do that unless there's something in it for them. There would have to be some really big benefit that they could use as some advantage, but otherwise, it's very highly unlikely that they're going to go. The only time a narcissist goes to therapy is when it's usually couples counseling, because they're having trouble in their relationships, because like you said, they don't know how to have a relationship. But they are there to prove that the other person's crazy. Right. That person's the problem, because they will not take accountability. No. And they truly feel that everything that they say and do and their reactions are valid, justifiable, and it's never their fault. They are always the victim. It's always somebody else did it. Somebody else made them do it. They're never accountable. And it makes it so frustrating. So yeah, you're never going to get them on the couch, but we have to deal with it. We have to deal with, being told we're crazy. We have all these problems. We have mental issues. And that's something that just gnaws at me when people want to slap that stigma on us, because then you have a lot of people walking around saying, I'm broken, I'm damaged, and they're not broken or damaged. They're not.
Right.
Are they having a little more trouble dealing with certain situations? Do certain things maybe trigger them that they have to work a little harder to self-regulate? Yeah, and it sucks. Nobody wants to be that way, but it doesn't define us as people. It doesn't define who we are inside and what our capabilities are and what our potential and our dreams and plans and wishes and whatever else. But people want to stick us in this little box, like put us in this little compartment that, we're damaged, we're no good anymore. And making somebody feel that deficiency about themselves is so disgusting to me, because if anything, we should be helping people like we help each other, to raise us up and encourage and uplift, because I don't care who you are, but you're capable of whatever you want to do, regardless of where you came from in your circumstances. But certainly the circumstances we came from, especially in our childhoods, and then, the trauma we deal with as adults, definitely affects our abilities to do the things that we're trying to do.
Right. And we have so many things, Dana, that it's like obstacles in the way everywhere. And everyone that I've had the pleasure of talking with and interviewing, they all say, okay, well, here it is. It started in my adulthood, but it didn't. And nowhere have I really been able to find where people really dissect it from a childhood's point of view, because that's where it starts. And if you don't know where the root of it began, you really can't cope with it, heal with it, and go through your journey of healing from it. So it's a challenge in that aspect. But it took me decades to realize where mine came from. And I was so not allowed to speak out about it. I was always at fault for things I wasn't even there for. I could not be there. And it was my fault. And to this day, I would sit there and go, how is it I blamed for something I wasn't even geographically present for? But that's what happened. And what I just really want to really go into also is how is it that one child ends up being put into the role of a black sheep, and another is the golden child, and the night and day difference of those kids is unheard of. And then when you try to have any kind of communication, yet alone a relationship with your sibling, they think you're crazy because they don't understand. And it's because they're only hearing from the parent point of view. They won't even hear your point of view. And that's what makes it even worse. And, I have learned the most dangerous person in that entire family is the black sheep, because we're the ones that know the truth, and we're the ones that will call it out eventually.
But that's what makes us the problem.
Right.
That's why we're the problem. And I think I actually said it even in my book, that when you have a problem, what do? You get rid of it. You solve it somehow. So we are, as the black sheep, the truth seers, as they sometimes call us, we are the ones removed from the family. We are the ones that the rest of them have to create this narrative about, that you can't believe her because she's crazy. They have to destroy our credibility. So no matter what we say, other people will follow them. And that's something that I've struggled with. I guess the injustice of being the one that's ousted or exiled, so to speak, because how is it that all these grown adults that claim to be independent thinkers and seem to be intelligent and seem, to be capable at least of forming their own opinions, how is it that they're not seeing what's really happening? And if they are seeing what's happening, then why is it that they're buying into it? Are they afraid that they'll be targeted next? Are they afraid to go against the people that are spreading these, ideas about us as the black sheep, that it might happen to them? And but what is it? Because I have been struggling to figure that out. And every family has that one. There's a narcissist in every family, that one domineering person who thinks they're in charge of everyone and everything, and nobody will go against them. Nobody.
And then it depends on the level that they are in that narcissistic, place, because I go back and look at I call them my bio parents, because my grandparents were so influential in my life. But there is not one child out of the three of us that get along with both parents. Like, not one of us get along with both. And actually, two of us are not even allowed on their property. We're not even, and my daughter was even told, you're not allowed on the property. And they told her this years and years
Oh
ago.
my
And
goodness.
she was like, she's still a kid. And it's like, for what? Because I finally, after years and years, said, I need to get this off my shoulders. And
Right.
I came close. I came clean. And I've always been this person now growing up, because I was always told, oh, she's lying, she's lying, she's lying. And the only thing we have is our word. And so I became someone who just gathered evidence like nobody's business.
Yes.
And my background's law. And so I always knew evidence, evidence, evidence. The more you have, the more. And so, I had called up a few years ago to my biological mother, who we never had a good relationship at all. And I said, I would like to get, some of our stuff out of their storage. I mean, they live in a 10,000 square foot house, and they have huge storage, and they let us have storage there. And so when we pulled up, my daughter and I pulled up, it was like Sanford and Sons. They had everything out on the lawn. And I rang the doorbell, and Faith needed to go to the bathroom, and she wasn't allowed to go in the house to go to the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
And so she wanted to see their dog, and she wasn't allowed. And then she said, can you let the dog out on the stoop, on the stoop? No. So then, she was really upset. So I asked her to go sit down, and I said, I really contemplated this, because I just didn't know if it was going to do any good, but you know what? I think you have the right to know. And I said, I probably have another 10, 12 inches full of evidence, but I only brought some. You cannot keep these. I will show them to you. And I said, I am well aware of what doing this is going to do to me. But I thought you have the right to know. And I said, I don't think you know who you're married to. And she went from a lower class, when she first met him, situation to like, they eat out every single meal. They have yardsmen, gardeners, maids, and so it was such a shock. She's not going to give that up. And I told her I'd rather have all the love in the world than all the money in the world. And so I started showing her photographs. And I think you and I've talked off camera about this. And I said, did you know that when I took Faith on a weekend and he went with us, meaning my biological dad, that one of his women showed up with her kid? And she's like, nuh-uh. And I said, yeah. And I said, he did, she did. And she's like, I don't believe you. Well, here's a picture in the hotel room. And I said, so obviously I'm not lying. What would I accomplish from lying? And
right.
I said, here they are canoodling at a restaurant. And she's like, well, there's two sides to every story. What's the other side to this?
But you know what? You and I have talked about this off camera, because, my my biological mother and her husband, who's the only father figure I've ever known, if you can even call him that, same situation, very huge, like we call it a compound where they live, and same thing, gardeners, cleaning lady, the whole thing. But, my mother is the same way. And I noticed that very early on. She doesn't want to hear the truth. And I think it's the same in your situation. They don't want to acknowledge the truth, because that would make them accountable to take action, like the normal action that would be taken in that situation. So they have to deny it, and you have to be a liar, because they don't want to risk losing everything that they have. And like you, my mother, when my mother and I have no contact, and that was her decision, because she felt that she could not live her life, her ability to, she's very financially well off with her husband. And she thinks that if she has a relationship with me, it will somehow influence her to go against him. And she's not willing to do that. So she just, nope. I just don't have a daughter anymore. Took my pictures off the wall. But my brother now, the golden child, they're all very close and they vacation together and they just love his new wife, and they're one big happy family. But that's what it's about. And I think that though, because you're smart, that she just doesn't want to see it. She
Well,
has
right.
to deny it. She has to negate it. So she's not only gaslighting you, but she's gaslighting herself so that she feels okay staying in that situation.
Right. Well, and I had told her, I said, look, I'm not doing this out of malice. I'm doing this because I think you have the right to know. And I said, he's going to spin this. But if there was nothing
Mhm.
happening and nothing going on, why didn't he tell you that she was there?
Right.
Why didn't he ever mention that? I said, here's a text message he sent me at midnight when they were in the movies at the movie theater. And it said, we're still in the movie. How's her daughter? And I said, this is absolutely not okay. This is not fair. What you're doing is wrong. And I showed her this text message. Well, and not only that, but my brother has no relationship with his dad. And I said, if I wanted to do this to hurt somebody, which is absolutely not what I wanted to do, I would show him all of this. And I bet you, Dana, I have 100, if I have one, things from my dad where he was just being so wrong about my brother. Like, my brother
Mhm.
is gay, and it was, I can't have, and I'm quoting him, I can't have a faggot for a son. I couldn't have,
Oh my gosh.
no way. And my brother loves Batman. And so he's like, oh my God. And he would send me pictures of a gay Batman. And he would say, he's not ever bringing his boyfriend to this house. He didn't date till he was in his 30s, was the first time he ever dated anyone. I knew when he was young, he was gay. And I told him, I said, look, as long as they treat you right and don't put their hands on you in an unwarranted manner, I don't care. And we haven't spoken because all he hears is what his mom says, but
Right.
he has no relationship with his dad. And this guy is older. He has no idea. My brother has no idea that my parents asked me to research and really get information on him. My brother thinks they did it, that they paid for somebody to do it. They have no idea it was me. They lied to his face about it. This guy, maybe is a great guy, maybe he's a nice guy, I don't know. He is a very big former drug addict. He has a criminal record that we both could wrap all Christmas presents from here to eternity with on his rap sheets.
Wow.
And this kid my brother is so smart. He's a very smart guy, with a lot of potential, but he has no self-esteem and no self-worth. And I said, if I knowingly showed him any of this, I know he'd have a mental breakdown. I know he would. And I know he would do something that probably couldn't come back from. And so I never showed him any of these. I've never, because I wouldn't want to hurt him. Like, I know he thinks I'm
Right.
horrible because that's what he hears, but I've never come to him and said, look at all of this that they say about you. Like, this is what they say and think about you. And I can't bring myself to do it because why would I intentionally go out to hurt him? But the point is like, and I told my mom, if you will, I said, I know coming clean with this just literally wiped me out of my inheritance, and that's fine. Like, I know
Yeah.
I walked away from all of it, and that's fine because
Yeah.
it was held over my head forever. And
Yeah.
all I ever wanted was like the pictures of my grandparents, the monumental things that reminded me of my grandparents. Those are the things that I wanted. But it was always brought to me like, oh, you get the house, you and your brother are going to share the house,
Mhm.
you guys will get all this money and yada yada. And I was like, you
Yeah.
know what, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. My
Yeah.
sanity is worth more. My family is worth more. And it doesn't matter to them. It's the facade of, look at what I drive, look at where I live.
Yep.
And why? I can't put my mind in that set that's like, why would
It
that
makes
be enticing
it
to you?
because it makes them feel important. It makes them feel superior, which is the basis of all narcissistic behavior. These are people that actually have a very deep-seated insecurity about who they are, and maybe they were neglected as children, maybe they just feel so much less than other people that it is all a facade. It's all a show to say, look at me, look at my status, look, because they want praise, they want admiration, they got to fill that ego
Hey.
up. Because again, it's my stepfather is actually the big narcissist, although gosh, my mother, I swear, I never thought she was a narcissist. She definitely enabled and excused and tolerated his behavior, but she has just turned exactly into her husband. But yeah, they have the Jaguar and the Corvette and the Harley and the Lexus and I don't care.
Right.
I
It's a
don't care.
car.
But you know what? Yeah. And the house is ridiculous. No two people need a 6-bedroom, 4.5 bath house. And I think there's living quarters above the extra garage. Like they have a separate detail. It's just ridiculousness.
Mhm.
And that's fine for people that want that and can afford it. I mean, I have a big, beautiful house. I'm very blessed where we live comfortably, my husband and I, but I don't need this stuff. I could live in a tent outside with my husband. I could live in the car with my husband, but I'm glad about that. And it doesn't make me better than anyone else, but I appreciate, like, if there's one good thing that came out of being, I don't even like to say that I was raised by these two people because they did nothing to raise me. They
Well,
only
I disagree. I
drowned me and
disagree.
brought me down.
I
But
disagree, Dana. I have to tell you, they showed you what not to do. They
they
showed you what
showed me what
not to
not to do.
be.
Right. And
So
that's where I was going, is that I actually have humility. I actually can, I don't care if somebody lives in a trailer or if they live in a $5 million house. To me, they are a human being and they are just as valid and worthy and deserving as anybody else of my time and attention. And it's all about who we are on the inside. And these people that are they have to wear the Rolex and they have to, it actually, I'm at the point in I'm going to be 48 next month. I'm like repelled when people like, oh, look at my new car. And it's like some real expensive, fancy car. It's like, I have to sometimes stop myself and be like, okay, this is not a bad person. They have worked very hard and they're very excited. Don't crap all over it. But in my mind, I'm thinking, you piece of crap. Like, why do you have to have this? Like, and why are you showing it off? But, not everybody is like that. But that, when I see like these so-called status symbols, the big houses, the cars, the watches, the clothes, like you say, the meals out at these certain restaurants, I'm like, oh, give me a break. Like, McDonald's isn't my favorite, but like, take me to Chili's, like Culver's, whatever.
yeah,
Like, I'm good.
I love
I love
Culver's.
I know. Well, out here in Chicago, we have Portillo's. So take me for a hot dog at Portillo's anytime, a true Chicago hot dog. I love it. But yeah, like I don't need a steak. I don't need a $20 bottle or glass of wine that's probably like Rio Nidi that costs like $5 for the whole big bottle. Like, I just don't need that.
Right.
But narcissists do.
Yes.
Narcissists, it's
Yes.
an insatiable need that they have. They just don't know any other way, and they get it through people and things, and they use people to gain these things and for their resource. And so that's why narcissistic abuse, if you're targeted, if you are used by one of these people, you have to be very aware of it. And if you choose it, like our mothers obviously did, then that's their business. But I'm good keeping myself apart from it. Do I wish I had a mother? Yes. Doesn't every girl want to have a mother? Absolutely. Even at my age, there's times you just want your mom. We have friends, we have aunts and but you want your mom,
Mhm.
and we don't have that. But I'd rather not have her in my life than to have what comes
Right.
with that life with her. Because even just these situations where you get so frustrated when, like you said, you're showing her evidence and oh, it's just so frustrating. And I get the whole not being on the property because my grandma was moved in with my mother and stepfather, and I apparently made the mistake of going there on Easter to see my grandmother, because my grandma called and said, nobody's home, hurry over. So
Oh.
like, I went there thinking, okay, nobody will know. Well, apparently they'd installed cameras, and the
Yep.
second that I went through that door, there was a phone call. And my uncle lied. They said, is Dana there? And he goes, no, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh my gosh, now he's going to get caught lying. So he's panicking. Grandma's panicking. And he was told, tell Dana she needs to leave. She's not welcome at our house. And I just thought, my God, so now I don't get to see my grandma either. And I've only seen her one other time. I've seen her twice in this whole year, and they live 7 miles away. It's sad. It's
It is so
disgusting.
sad. It is. It's so sad. And, so many people give the excuse, well, I went through horrific mental trauma growing up, so I have the right to be violent now. No, that's not. No,
Mm-mm.
you have to break the cycle, because if anyone has the right to like go on a mental trauma, spree, be me and you. And we haven't done it.
Yes.
Like, you break the cycle. We're stronger than that. And that's the big thing. I remember my grandparents walked on water. Like, I grew up never wanting to disappoint them, that they were everything I wanted to be in life. And I went to them because they were my dad's parents. And I went to them and said, how is he your son? And I couldn't understand. My grandfather had passed. I was 15. And I was asking my grandmother, and I was like, I don't understand how that's your son. And she
Right.
goes, well, ask yourself this: how are you their daughter? And I was like, oh,
Interesting.
because she's like, how are you their daughter? And she goes, I didn't raise him this way. And she goes, she ruined him. And I was like, that makes sense. Like, because she just looked at me and says, how are you their daughter? Because that's
Yeah.
not my son. And I was like, wow, when you really take that some simple answer and you really look at it, it makes so much sense.
It really does. And it just goes to show how influential people can, especially these narcissists. I mean, that's how they get by. That's how they get away with doing the things that they do, because they have the ability to persuade people. They can read people so well, they know how to work you to get what they want. But it also makes me sad, to think that there are people like our mothers that allow themselves, because they know it. They know it. If you're showing your mother proof of something, visual pictures, and I've been in that situation, not with a cheating situation or anything, but where I'm like, you were standing 2 feet away. I know you just heard what he said. Like,
Right.
don't stand here telling me you didn't hear anything. Like, that's bull. But when you present them with proof, that's why they have to just negate it,
Right.
because they absolutely just choose their situation. They are fine living in denial because for whatever reason they want that life. And maybe even these narcissists have made them believe that they can't have anything that they have now if they weren't with them. And I think that's what a lot of people tell me, at least.
Yeah.
So, we just have to be glad that we are the cycle breakers. I think it's really important to know that, like, the fact that you have the relationship you have with your parents and mine with mine, that we don't put that on our children. Do
Absolutely.
I want my son to have anything to do with them? Hell no.
Right.
Absolutely not. But I am not going to make that choice for him, because at the end of the day,
I agree.
my dynamic with them is completely different than my dynamic with anyone else, and vice versa. Just like the difference between siblings, my brother's the golden child, I am the ultimate scapegoat. They poo-poo all over me, but he can do no wrong.
Right.
So I trust that my son can make his own conclusions, and I also hope that they treat my son the way they have treated my brother, to where he's glorified and everything's wonderful. Had they the first 16 years of my son's life? No, they were nowhere to be found, and that caused some fights because they just were uninvolved, just like they were uninvolved in my life. But since I divorced my son's father, and I don't know if they kind of swooped in right about then. I don't know if they thought maybe since the dad was out of
They
the
look like the
picture,
savior.
they look like the savior, and maybe they thought they could have more influence because they probably disliked my ex-husband more than I did. That's about the only thing that we could all agree on. But my son has a very close relationship with my parents. I
See,
don't like it. It feels disloyal sometimes, but I tell myself that is his relationship with them, not mine. And he shouldn't have to carry my
absolutely.
pains and the burden of my feelings and my injustice into his relationship, because one day I'm going to die, and I'm sure, somebody will be around over there still. And, he'll
Yeah.
have family, because at the end of the day, that's his family. And do I think biology and family is all, important? Unfortunately, life has taught me that your family and your tribe are the people who are truly for you. And unfortunately, in my case, that has not always been family, but I don't want to take family away from my kid, just like you're not trying to do it with your daughter. And
Right.
if
But
she
they
wants to
disowned
send a
her.
greeting, right. But if she wants to send a greeting card or whatever, I love that you're letting her do the right thing, because I mean, in my mind, it is the right thing. She should do what she feels, and you are doing that, allowing her to do what she feels is right. How they receive it is in nobody's control. You already know how they're going to receive it.
Oh,
So
I
of
know.
course you feel protective over your daughter and want to spare her of the same pains
Yep.
that they've brought upon you. But at the end of the day, we have to be the cycle breakers. We cannot keep perpetuating, just like even in society, you brought up, about homosexuality, and I've come across people that are homosexual that get so angry that, and they get violent sometimes. And it's not even just with homosexuality. I'm not picking on that. I'm just using it as an
Right.
example. But, you know, I just tell people, it's like, you can't expect love and acceptance with hatred. I mean, the
Right.
hatred's going to beget hatred, love begets love, and you can't force other people to see things. That you're not going to get a 90-year-old person from the South to suddenly, be okay with homosexuality and expect them not to be a racist or something. I mean,
You're
it
right.
doesn't make it okay, but you can't control it. But you
Right.
should not let them bring you down and lower yourself to that kind of behavior either.
Right. Well, it's such a difference because, like, with my dad, you never knew what you were going to get. One minute he was your best friend because he could use you as a scapegoat
Mm-hmm.
to cover for the women or whatever the case may be. Then you have my mom, who had no relationship with me because I had a relationship with my dad for a while because I was the scapegoat. Well, neither one of them had a relationship with my daughter. And it was like my mom would never do anything with her, never spend any time with her or anything.
Right.
But my heart breaks, Dana, for my brother, because the relationship between him and his mom, my mom, is so twisted. Like, and it's because I've never seen a relationship like, I've been asked by other therapists, is it a sexual relationship? Because they, for the longest time, have always gone on vacation together, just the two of them, every year. And my mom's even referred to him as her husband.
Oh
And
my.
yeah, and they go on cruises together and they share a room, and
Oh.
they get those pictures made that make them look like they're a couple. And he calls her like 8-9 times a day, and he texts her 8 or 9 times a day, and she'll go get groceries for him and go over to his place. He moved out for the first time when he was in his late 20s, and he never dated until he was in his 30s. And it was all mom, mom, mom. Like, he would text her all day long, and she walked around with a phone in her hand as if it was super glued to her hand in case he texted, so she could get it instantly. And he got dehydrated, and they took him by ambulance at work, and you would have thought she lost like the love of her life, and it was dehydration. But yet my daughter and I, who had over 135 surgeries combined, to hell with that, like, whatever. But it literally, like, he texted her and he's like, oh, he would get in car wreck after car wreck after car wreck, and he would always go to her, and she would handle everything for him, makes every bank deposit for him. um Everything was all him. Like, he goes and just does these things, and then he follows a band, like, but he has his master's degree, and he's so smart, but he's waited tables at the same deli for 18 years, and he's done nothing else. But he's so smart, and he's undercutting his value. And
Yeah.
I can't say anything, but, like, everything is mom, 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 mom. And they go get pedicures together and manicures together, and then they just they share food and feed each other, and it is so I'm serious. Like I'm adopted. I was left at the
Oh
front step
my
of a fire station or something.
gosh.
But I feel so bad because he's a good kid, and he's only heard whatever they want to say to him, or what she has said
Right.
to him, because he has no relationship with him, my dad. But it's heart-wrenching because now he is with this guy. They've been together for years, and it's heart-wrenching because you think about that, and it's like, my mom would say, oh, he wrote a thesis and for school, and it's so hard to write a thesis, and I'm like, I've written a book.
Right.
It's not, writing a thesis is harder than writing a book.
Yeah.
um okay, and I'm not taking it away from him, but it's like, he wrote a thesis, he's better than you.
Right.
Okay. And that, you can never be good enough. You can never ever be good enough.
Yeah. I had the same thing in my house. And my stepfather would openly compare my brother and I, yet I would stand there and be like, oh, okay, but you encouraged him, you let him, you provided opportunities for him to be that. But at the same time, like, why does it matter? You know what I mean? It was an unfair competition that I never asked to be in the
Right.
first place. However, it was just assumed, or I think actually, because I'm in the process of working on the book about my childhood, and I feel like I was prevented from developing my potential because very early on I was always very involved in the arts,
Mm-hmm.
particularly with music. And it was like, okay, well, we're not paying for lessons anymore, we're not driving you around so you can be in the area's symphonic orchestra, even though you've been first chair and work really hard for that. Oh, and you're in 2 orchestras, actually. Like, I could go on with all these things, but my brother walks up to a piano and dings one little note and he's Mozart. Yeah, literally. And I will never forget. That's actually something, the most recent thing that stung me, you were talking about writing, was when I did publish my book. It's a big deal to publish a book. It
It
was probably the one thing I finally could feel good enough about myself to say, like, wow, good job, girl. No
is a
matter, I don't care if
fantastic
I
book.
sold 1 or 1 million, but it was like, it was my blood, sweat, and tears for 3.5 years. And I was very proud of myself. And I have a hard time acknowledging my own accomplishments, but not once. I know we're estranged, but my goodness gracious, I have yet to have any communication from my mother or stepfather, not even a little note or a text, nothing saying good job or we heard, or not even through third party, like not through grandma, not through, anybody. But boy, when my brother was working on his doctorate in physics and had some study that he was a part of published in some scientific journal, I'm not even kidding, I don't know if they bought 50 copies or 100 copies of stuff like no normal person would normally read. Like, we don't
Right.
even understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're at that level of physics, it's so beyond, anything we could comprehend. But but here I wrote a book and it's published and you can actually read and understand it, yet nothing, no acknowledgement. And that's the disparity they made our entire lives.
Yes. What do you
And
think they're going to do when you write the one about your childhood?
well, you know what? I'm at the point where I don't care. I mean, I'm just going to say it. The truth is the truth. I think even with the book that I put out, there were some hints of it, because I think when you do have, when you are minimized as a child, whether it's through, any kind of abuse, usually there's at least verbal or emotional abuse involved when you're diminishing any child's spirit. But I think that child grows up like I have, and you could probably relate. You said not feeling good enough, not feeling, you feeling capable, and kind of, there's all these terrible things that ruin our self-esteem and our idea of ourselves. And my intent is not to, this is not vengeance. It's not about even exposing them or anybody.
Your
It's
story.
about finally telling the truth, because I do not want anybody in this entire world to feel the things that I have felt. And I have gone through so much, different therapies and different ways of resolving issues. I don't think the healing journey ever ends. I mean, even just last week,
Right.
Thanksgiving, holidays are awful. I was almost my own kind of monster on Thanksgiving because I hate knowing that my brother is there with his wife having a meal and grandma's there with them, but nobody even said happy Thanksgiving or do you have a place to go? Or, it's just the fact that people can just erase me from there. It hurts.
It does
It
hurt.
hurts to know that somebody actually thinks that I am nothing.
Yeah.
And it stays with me no matter how much therapy, it's always going to be there. And it affects everything. And I feel like I've gotten it all different ways because, I don't have my mother and stepfather, and they have taken most of the family with them. I do have a few family members that communicate with me, but there's no holidays with them. I'm not invited to birthdays and celebrations. And then my ex, I was with him 25 years. I mean, my father-in-law used to introduce me to people as his daughter, which was funny because then people would be like, isn't that your son? Like they're together. That's weird. But, they were my family. But when we divorced, they just erased me, never will talk to me again. But again, my ex was a narcissist. So he had actually even told me that he had told his family atrocious lies about me to make sure that they hated me and that they would never speak to me again. So now I didn't have that family. And now I'm remarried. And my husband, I've known his family probably at least 16 or 17 years, much longer than I knew him. And there's a narcissist in his family that decided that I wasn't allowed to be part of their family either. Probably because she knew I was writing a book about narcissism and that I speak out about it. And she is a prime example. So she rallied the family, even had 2 interventions to try to stop the wedding.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was fun stuff. So now I have, the resistance from that side. It's like I just feel like everywhere I turn and my husband he feels so bad for me because he's like, you're like the sweetest thing ever. You don't even go anywhere because you have social anxiety and you're terrified of people now.
Aw.
Somehow you just rub people wrong. And I think it's because I just don't have tolerance for BS.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to being that scapegoat and being that truth seer. But the problem is that I see through people. I see who they really are. I see through their facades. I see through all their words and their fake crap.
Right.
And I'm not one of these, like, I don't like confront people and embarrass them or, I mean, I could be the confrontational police and call them out, but I don't. I wait till I get home and do it with my husband, but it's just amazing that they can sense that who they are, and they are so terrified of being, exposed to everybody
Mhm.
for who they really are, because they know how ugly they are inside, that they have to make in this case, me, they have to make me the one who's the problem. They have to make me the faulty one. I'm defective. I'm everywhere I turn, I'm called crazy. And there have been so many rumors about me, and I get the few family members that do communicate with me in the different sides of the family tell me, oh, your mother just said that she doesn't talk to you because of this, or your mother can't love you because of that. I'm like, why is she even talking about me when she doesn't even talk to me? She
Right.
doesn't know anything about me. But that's how narcissism works, and it's unfortunate, but it makes it so you just stop caring. I mean,
Right.
at this point, I have heard, from the more recent narcissist in my life, that I only married my husband to get his house. I'm like, I had my own house that was in mine. And I worked very hard for it. Like, I didn't need his house, but I've heard I'm pregnant because, I'm trying to trap him. And I'm like, okay, one, if you knew me, I'm autoimmune, and I had many miscarriages just trying to have my son. So it's disgusting even to suggest that I'm pregnant, because well, and I'm going to be 48. I'm too tired to have a baby, but I would love if I could be pregnant with we'd make the cutest little baby. But the man's 58. No, we're not pregnant. But I do want to maybe go buy a baby bump and walk around town with like one of those candy cigarettes, because it's like, if people want to talk about me, I'm almost at the point where I just don't care, to the extent that I almost want to promote more talk
Right.
about me. Like, if you want to be that obsessed, like I see them sneaking, looking at my profile on social media. I'm like, you don't talk to me, but you're
Checking me
worried about
out.
what I'm doing. But I'm like, hey,
You're a
I'm
threat.
here. Hi.
Yeah.
That's why I love Taylor Swift anyway. I'm an old Swiftie, but man, I love that song Anti-Hero. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. That's just who I am now. It's my theme song.
Why do you think that, or how do you think they, as parents, and I don't think they deserve that title, how do they choose which one of us gets the reigning title of black sheep or a scapegoat, and who gets the golden child? I mean, how do they come up with that when we're so young?
Well, I know how it happened in my situation, but my situation is probably a little different than other people's. In my case, my mother got pregnant with me as a teenager with her boyfriend back then. And so, I mean, it was during the time where it wasn't okay to have a baby when you were a teenager, especially unwed. So she didn't want me. But what's really interesting is I don't think she wanted any children, because I was born on her 17th birthday. And right after I was born, like, I came out, the placenta came out, and she had the doctor tie her tubes so she couldn't have any more babies. So she really didn't want kids. And I think it was just, for me, all I had to hear through my childhood was, I mean, she would refer to me as an accident. It was like talked about right in front of me. She would constantly make me feel guilty that she couldn't finish high school, that all the people, all the kids at school called her a whore and deemed her easy, and all the stigma, the judgment that she went through. She was very ashamed, but she put it on me. And
You didn't
it
tap
would,
her head and say, "Hey, I need a
I
caretaker,"
know,
you
I
know?
know, but in
Kind of
her
laid down and
mind,
did the deed.
you know what, though? I agree. And I said that to her once, because I just, as an adult, because I got tired of even my brother, who's 14 years younger than me. And by the way, apparently you can have your a tubal ligation reversed, because that's how she ended up having the baby with her husband. But we've had that argument, because that's the thing, is that why am I paying for my mother's sins? But this goes back to what, when you were going back to your biological mother and saying, I have evidence, here's what happened. They don't want to see it the way it really is.
Right.
My mother cannot conceive of the fact that she put herself in a situation and she did something that resulted in me, which was not a good thing to her, and something that she just would never. So I was just always going to be this. And then she married this man, like I said, ultimate narcissist. And it was offensive to him that he's with this woman who has a child that's not his. Like, I'm actually working on that chapter right now in my book, and going back to, I felt like I was being replaced because I wasn't good enough. My biology was deficient. It wasn't right. So I couldn't be part of their family. They had to have their own child. If I had to hear that one more time, their own child. And when their own child came along, I was actually told to my face that I was no longer a part of their family, that it was them and their kid, and there was me, and they shouldn't even have to pay for me because I was somebody else's kid. It was so I'm laughing because otherwise I'd be crying. but this is healing right here. I mean,
Yes.
you get to the point where you just don't cry anymore because you realize how awful it is that people made a little child. I mean, if you think about it, we all know, like, a 5 or 6-year-old little kid. Imagine saying those things to that child. And I mean, if I heard anyone, even like in a Walmart, talking to a kid that way, I'd have to speak up. I don't care what your relation to that child is. You do not speak to
Absolutely.
a child that way. That is awful. Like, call
Try
child services.
try being 9 and hearing, I wish I had miscarried you instead of your brother, because she lost a child in between. And then she had my brother after that. Like, I
Oh
wish
my
you
goodness
were the one I had
gracious.
miscarried. And then
That's horrendous.
I know, and I was 9.
Yeah, I have heard a few times that my mother said she wanted to abort me, but she couldn't find a doctor back then to do it. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Like, I don't know why would you even say that to me? Like,
No.
I don't know what is the appropriate response. I remember I said thank you because I didn't know what else to say.
You know, I got, my dad said to me after I had another surgery because of the abuse, he said to me, you know what? You used to be stunning. You used to turn heads, and now all you're doing is turning stomachs.
Oh my goodness
Yeah. That
gracious.
was like the norm. That was the norm. And, you know, it just literally is like, I always stood front and not allow that to my kid, because I was like, you will not speak to my child in that manner. And I would say, you know, walk away. And I would shield her. I'd stand fast and say,
Oh yeah.
if you want it, you say it to me. Like, my daughter had a surgery. There was a period of time where they used it to their advantage, telling everybody that their daughter had
Mm-hmm.
gotten beaten up, and it was this horrific event, and yada yada yada. And their granddaughter was special needs and had all these things and surgeries and blah 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 blah. And I was told I couldn't even make a healthy child. And
Isn't that great how they use that? I am
I felt like it
just,
knocked the wind out of me when
yeah,
I heard that.
I'm sure it did, because that's reminding me, I swear we just have so many similarities. It's reminding me of, again, I had multiple miscarriages, because I'm autoimmune, and I had difficulty carrying a pregnancy past 6 weeks. Um, my husband would breathe on me, I'd get pregnant. I just couldn't carry them. So I had my son in May of 2003, healthy, wonderful, thrilled that he was here. That Christmas, my mother puts out, I didn't see this until I got this in the mail. You know how people type out this whole Christmas newsletter? I don't even know why she did it, because she had nothing really good to share. She put in the Christmas newsletter that their first and only grandchild had been born that year, and it's probably the only one that they're ever going to have, because their daughter can't even carry a pregnancy, or it said something to that effect. And I just remember standing there and my mouth dropped open. And I mean, again, like, what do you say? I mean, thank you. Thank you for letting everybody know that, again, I'm deficient in something, like, and especially something touchy like that.
It's so personal.
Our whole biology, I mean, our biblical purpose as women is to procreate.
Yeah.
And you have made me feel like completely deficient my whole life. And now I can't even do, like, don't you think I felt bad enough
Right.
over all the little angels I now have in heaven? And you're going to put that out for the world? And no, you know what? I never was able to. I was pregnant after that, and I could never carry another to term. But shame on her. But this
Absolutely.
is what it's like to be the scapegoat. This is what it's like. I mean, because a couple years, I think it was only a year or two after that, I opened the Christmas newsletter. I wish I would have kept it so people, but there are witnesses, because I got a few phone calls when everyone else got it. The very first letter of it said, "The only thing good in my life is my son." And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm your daughter. I have your only grandchild. And, like, thanks again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
But again, I think we get to the point where we can talk about it openly without crying our eyes out. I mean, I think we've both probably shed many, many tears and
So many.
gut-wrenching sobs. But
Absolutely.
I think, you were talking about, like, we just develop a tough skin, I think, when you
Yes.
heard it your whole life. The next thing that comes, it almost just annoys you or ticks you off more than it makes you upset. Because I'm not internalizing it anymore, because I see it for what it is.
Right.
It's to diminish me so you feel good. You have now created another human being that you have raised completely opposite of how you raised me. Almost in my situation, I feel like they almost did that to prove me wrong, so that me running around saying, oh, they're terrible parents, they don't know how to parent, call child services, they have another example of a child that's perfect and wonderful, and he's basically their puppet. But okay, fine. So then it makes me look really bad because I'm over here, you know being a little erratic and emotional because of all the things I'm being told and being
Justifiably.
done to me justifiably. But it looks crazy, let's use that term again, compared to this wonderful example of their parenting over there.
Or lack thereof.
Well, they did. They parented him wonderfully
Right. But
because
us,
he's the
they
golden
didn't.
child. Us, they didn't.
Right.
But nobody knows that, because people have this idea that, if you have all these kids in the same house, they must be raised the same. Well, guess what? They're not. I remember back in the 90s, anybody that has child issues, go read A Child Called It. It
Mm-hmm.
was one of the most terrific cases in California history, but I even reread it this year. Out of the 5 children that family had, it was only the one that was abused, and it was only the mother abusing that child. And just like in my situation, the other parent turned their head, knew it was happening, felt bad, but didn't do anything about it.
Right.
Nobody did anything. So people are capable of being raised differently in a home where there's multiple children and the same parents.
Yes. And that's what I'm hoping that we obtain are even more listeners that can hear and say, you know what, I relate to this. Finally, someone's talking about what unfortunately I've been through, and they get it. They understand it. It's one thing to go and get your degree in it and be able to sit and talk clinically. And then it's another thing to say, and I hate that people have to go through it to understand it, but then you have the empathy because you lived it and you get it, but nobody wants to talk about it because there's such fear of the judgment. And you know what, to hell with the judgment.
Yes.
If it's going to help somebody, then more power to it, because people need to realize it's not our fault. We didn't do it. I mean, we were blamed for things our whole life we had nothing to do with. And people just feel like, okay, I'm just going to go into this dark deep corner in the back of the wall and put my head down in shame because I am at fault for everything negative that ever happened to these people, because I'm constantly told that it's my fault, but they weren't even involved in it. And hopefully we can bring some light to them and maybe let them see that they are worth fighting for. They are worth getting up, dusting themselves off. To hell with them. Watch out. I'm making a comeback. Here it is. And they get some understanding and some tools for their toolbox on how to heal in the right way.
Exactly. And I hope that people do understand that. And to tag along with what you just said, it's like when you're a female and you go to the gynecologist, I have a hard time going to a male gynecologist because it's not even about feeling like I'm being violated because a man's touching me in places. It's that he's never had a period.
Right.
He's never had a baby.
Right.
He's read it in a book, but it's the same kind of thing in our situation.
Absolutely.
Like my husband grew up with like a Beaver Cleaver family watching the Waltons and Disney every Sunday, and good for him. He doesn't get what goes on. He sees what goes on and what I have to deal with, but he doesn't get it. And that's good. I don't want him to, but there's a sense of community, I suppose, among those of us who have been through it and who do get it. And when you and I, we are able now to verbalize it and to give people that perspective. And I think it's important to do that so that people can then go and hopefully find their own acceptance. And you need to understand it to be able to accept it, because guess what? You are a doctor. You are changing lives every day. I'm doing my thing. I'm reaching people, through my writing and podcasting, just like you with your podcasting. you don't have to be a product of your circumstances.
I
You
love
can rise above it. Your circumstances don't define who you are. Maybe somebody else has an idea of who you are, but that's not who you really are.
right.
You are somebody that has something to contribute to this world, and you should go and do it and be it. Don't let anyone stop you.
Well, I am very, very excited about this series, and I'm so grateful that you're going to be doing it with us. And so we are going to work on the name of it, because we've got to come up with a name. And we will get this together, and we will be back with you guys next week. So I can't thank you enough, Dana, for being here today and making this happen. I know we're going to help a lot of people.
Yes, we are. Thanks for having me.
Of course.